There was money won this year and there was money lost, and today obviously we are going to be talking about that in the form of these are my best and worst UFC bets of the year. I mean, UFC is the only sport I watch. I've been a fan for years, but this was really the first year, to be honest, where I kind of started betting on most of the cards. Not all of them, but it's definitely a different experience, bro, okay? Because it's a different level of investment now, because now your fucking money's on the line, for better or worse. So today we're going to be breaking this down in the form of a tier list. Obviously, if these bets are going to be in the S or the A tier, these are good bets. They were risky. There was a good reward to them. Most people probably weren't picking this guy. Odds were against us. If it's in the B tier, you know, not the riskiest bet in the world, but still a good one, ended up hitting, logical, made sense, whatever the fuck you want to call it. If it's in the C tier, it's kind of going to be like the neutral ground. Like, it was a bet that, you know, yeah, logical pick, made sense going into it, and maybe the betting odds were close, but at the end of the day, it didn't hit. And obviously, here we fucking go, because if shit's going in the D tier and the F tier, these are bad picks. This is where a lot of money was lost. Maybe my eyes were too focused on the underdog that, you know, I'm looking at those plus 300, the plus 600. Maybe it's a pick I usually wouldn't go with, but I'm looking at the incentive of the betting, and I'm like, fuck it, I'll do it. Fuck it, right? Nothing bad's gonna happen. I'm looking at you, Stipe. So yeah, if the bets are in the D tier and the F tier, maybe not a lot of logic behind it. Poor pick. Didn't end up hitting for sure. Let me know your best and worst bets in the comments below. Would love to fucking hear it, but it is what it is. We're just gonna be jumping straight into it with Paddy the fucking Paddy, lad. Men need to start talking about their gambling, lad. This is going in A tier. Paddy Pimblett's win over Bobby Green. He was a slight underdog going into that fight. He opened up as a pretty big one, but I'm putting this in A tier because the reason why I'm happy about this, because A, Paddy took him out in a round, okay? Yeah, Green was the one that shot the takedown. Oh, you're a wrestler now. But regardless, it was still, I feel like when we were talking about the MMA fans, you know, the community, I'm talking with people about these fights, like, I would say more people than not thought Bobby Green was going to go in there and he's going to school him. Paddy Pimblett, dude. This guy's a fucking clown, you know, taking retired old Tony Ferguson to a decision. This guy's got nothing. And then everyone talks about the Jerry Gordon shit and how this Paddy's a meme and all that. People get it twisted. They do the same thing to, like, people like Ian Gary. Like, you forget that this guy actually knows how to fucking fight, and he's skilled, and he's going to keep rising the ranks, young, hungry, and they have good shit to their skill sets. But you look at, you look at the fucking cornrows, you look at the braids, you look at the goofy goober ass vibe he's got going on, and it gets you twisted, and you forget what actually goes in there. Like, your emotions get the better, you know? If you don't like a fighter, obviously, like, the chances of them losing in your mind are going to be bigger, but that's why I gotta keep it separated a little bit, you know? I'm not necessarily a Paddy fan, but, like, he's a good fighter, dog. And the fact that more people than not thought Bobby Green was going to win this one, like, I get that Paddy isn't primarily a striker, but the striking was slowly improving, and he's young, and it's only a matter of time before, of course, he's going to get past a Bobby Green. Like, if someone's going to beat Paddy, right? Especially, we're going to the judges' scorecards and shit, and clearly, if it goes down to a close decision, it wasn't, I mean, Gordon clearly won. But at the end of the day, they're going to give it to Paddy. So while I do think he'll lose one day, I think it's going to be like a Dan Hooker or like a fucking Max Holloway. It's got to be someone elite, I feel like, okay? Because Paddy has the plot armor, and he went out there, took him out in a round, and the fact that he was a slight underdog, I understand that he opened at like a plus 190, ended up closing down to a plus 110 or 20, but this was a good pick. I was confident in it as soon as the fucking fight got announced. He just had a massive advantage in the grappling, you know, and he's quick on the feet, and he's young as well, and it's like it just seemed like a clear test he was going to get past. So moving on up next to Brendan Allen. Let me tell you what, I'm never fucking betting on Brendan Allen again. This is going in the D tier. This was Brendan Allen's performance against Nasruddin Imavov at UFC Paris. I thought that Brendan Allen was going to win. I thought this grappling was going to be too much. I know that Imavov is a well-rounded fighter. You know, I know he's primarily a striker, but, you know, he knows how to shoot a takedown. You know, he can get people to the ground. Not everybody, but still. And I thought that Brendan Allen was going to drown him, and that's not at all what fucking happened. Brendan Allen had a good first round. Hard to even say a good first round because he went out there, got the takedown, did absolutely nothing with it, but he still won the round. And then he got pieced the fuck up for the next two, shooting for his life, face first to the canvas, wasn't doing garbage. Imavov just showed that there's levels, and his striking was too much, and even his takedown defense got better as the fight progressed, or Allen's offense just got worse, who the fuck knows, but this was a bad pick. It's going in D tier. Looking back, I don't know why I did it, alright? I get it, but it's a bad bet, and Allen got fucking schooled. So moving on up next to Sean O'Malley at the Sphere. So lost this one as well, obviously lost to Merab Dvalishvili, and he was opened up as an underdog. I think it was like a plus 130, 150. That could be wrong, but he ended up becoming the favorite like the week of. Granted, it was slight, and at one point the fight was a pick 'em. It kept kind of going back and forth, but this was a close fight betting odds wise, you know, and even between fans, it was kind of hard to tell. But I noticed that the week of, as soon as the betting odds started to shift the odds shifted towards Sean, I noticed that the fans' opinions of the fight did as well. It seemed all of a sudden like O'Malley knocking out Merab, just because, you know, Merab has been proven, you know, he could be a bit chinny at times, but I feel like it went from being the underrated take to all of a sudden most people thought that Sean O'Malley was going to knock out Merab. And I'm going to put this in the D tier because I get why it made sense, okay? Because again, Merab has been proven he can get rocked in the past, but at the end of the day, man, the fact that people say this was a close fight, first of all, I can kind of understand it, but also not really, man. Like, Merab, I feel like clearly won the fight. It was a boring as fuck fight. Wasn't a great impression, to become a champion, and Merab has had much better wins, but it is what it is. And I just feel like we should have expected this, y'all. What were we fucking thinking, okay? We were totally just fucking wishful thinking on this one, because at the end of the day, you don't gotta love O'Malley. I'm personally like, he could be a bit cringe at times, but I feel like he's better for the division as champion than a guy like Merab. And I don't know what we were all thinking, man. I get the logic, but at the end of the day, this was a bad bet. It seems like, and Sean does have good takedown defense, don't get me wrong. He does have decent cardio. We saw him absolutely just school Chito Vera for a full 5 rounds. So Sean has been proven, he can go the distance. He has a lot of good strengths in his arsenal. Good takedown defense, really clean, sharp, precise striking, and he does have power. Well, it's not even necessarily the power, I feel like, that takes out most guys from Sean. I feel like it's just the volume and landing the right combos, the right shots, the right spot to the temple, and I feel like that's how he gets guys out, and I feel like he just didn't get it done, man. A talented fighter for sure. Close betting odds, so maybe I could put this in C, because again, I do get it, but it just should have, the outcome of this should have been more obvious to us, and I guess I'm talking about me, so it should have been more obvious. So Sean O'Malley's loss to Merab Develops for like the Sphere, that's gonna go in D. But moving on up next to Michael, okay, we're just gonna pile up D, because Michael Chandler, I put money on him to knock out Charles Oliveira at UFC 309. I made a whole video on it, dog, okay? I was confident, not the most, but still, okay, but at the end of the day, plus 210. How could I fucking not? And the thing is, watching that 5th round, right? I was live in the bars too, live at DraftKings, and I was watching on that big ass screen. And that 5th round, granted, back of the head shots, it was fucked up what Chandler did and all the grabbing in the cage. But the fact that he almost won via knockout, my heart was fucking racing, dude. And then honestly, after the fight went to show, like, the reason I'm not gonna put this in F, like, you really put money on Chandler. He really did almost have Oliveira in that 5th round. Like, granted, lost pretty much the whole fight except for that 5th round. And patient Chandler was not the move. Patient Oliveira ended up being good for him and his style and at this point in his career, but for patient Chandler, for him right now, it's not the fighter. If Chandler's going to go in being patient Chandler, I feel like he's not going to beat most guys, unfortunately. And some of those matchups he could win if he was. He has power and he can crack. There was a reason I put money on Chandler. There was a reason I fucking made the video thinking he was going to win, okay? Charles has a chin. He can get rocked. He is very, very, very elite. You can go back and forth on him and Saryukin, and you got Makhachev. Those 3 are kind of the bubble of lightweight right now of just the very elite. I feel like there's kind of levels. No disrespect to guys like Holloway or Poirier or Gaethje, because lightweight is stacked as fuck. But at the end of the day, there's levels. I underestimated how great Charles Oliveira is. I figured that he wasn't going to be as motivated coming in this fight. I saw that it was against Michael Chandler, who he had already beaten. I saw that Charles isn't getting any older, I saw that this fight wasn't for a title and probably would have to win one more after this. I just didn't know. And the thing is, I'm a big Charles fan. Charles is one of my favorite fucking fighters. So all in all, I shouldn't have fucking doubted Charles. Low IQ pick. It is what it is. I get that Chandler does have the power, so I get where I'm coming from. That's why it's not enough. But at the end of the day, let's move the fuck on. So moving on up next to Islam Makhachev. We're talking about, obviously, the only time he fought this year was against Dustin Poirier at UFC 302. He was a massive favorite. Minus 560 in this one, I believe. So I'm going to put this one in the B tier, because here's the thing. There were way too many people picking Dustin Poirier, okay? And I get it. And the fact that Dustin put such a good fight against Makhachev, whatever. You could say something about Makhachev's staff or whatever the fuck. Honestly, I just think that Poirier, I feel like he felt his career was on the fucking line last night. I feel like he wanted to walk away with that belt. I feel like we saw the best version of Dustin Poirier. Both these guys, Makhachev have great moments. Poirier had great moments, and there was a moment, especially in the later half of the fight, that people thought that Poirier was really going to take this one, but that wasn't the case. And I do think that even though Poirier had outstanding moments and really proved himself, and I mean, there was a reason that people were picking him, but I just felt like it was a fucking lot, man. And I feel like people's hearts were playing with them. I feel like because everybody loved Dustin and wanted Poirier to win, and it would have been amazing. Like, the whole build-up to that fight, and like, the pay-per-view was fucking weak. So everybody was talking about this fight. There was so much going into the storyline of it, and then they started fucking beefing at the end or whatever. But everybody wanted Dustin to win. I get it. And it's not like he didn't have a chance. I think but Dustin was like a plus 500. I thought that was a bit disrespectful. Like, Poirier's good, man. Poirier can crack, and he's experienced, and he's fought the elite of the elite. So it is what it is. The reason I'm going to put it in B, though, and nothing higher, is because he was a massive favorite. I feel like that, like, you're not going to be able to profit as much with someone like that. You know what I mean? And Makhachev should have won that night. There's a reason he was such a massive favorite that night. Like, I feel like he was expected to win, rack up another defense, and that's what he ended up doing. And he has a great other name on his resume now. So Poirier put up a great fight. Yeah, I'm going to put Makhachev. This is in the B tier. Good pick, but in terms of betting, not a lot of risk here. But moving on to next to Dricus du Plessis, his win over Israel Adesanya. So this is the only pick'em fight on the list, and for those of you that don't know what a pick'em fight is, basically the odds are completely even. There is no favorite and there's no underdog. This is a stalemate. They're both minus 110. And I'm going to put this one in the S tier because I had Dricus winning this one, and I just feel like this was a very back and forth fight amongst the community. I feel like more people than not were saying that Izzy was going to win, but also there was a good argument for both guys. Like, I feel like amongst the community or whatever, I feel like I was seeing a lot of back and forth. Like, this person thought Izzy was going to win because of this. This person thought that DDP was going to win because of this. And everybody had their arguments for it. You know, I like in the betting odds are a reflection of how close of a fight it was to call going into it. You know, it was hard to define a clear winner, but so I did go with DDP on this one. I said I didn't know if it was going to be a knockout or a sub or whatever, but I thought that he was going to overwhelm Adesanya in the later rounds. And that is what ended up happening. So Adesanya looked great and had a lot of good moments, was landing clean at the head, landing clean to the body, wasn't throwing any kicks. I think there was word he was injured going in the fight or whatever the fuck, but Adesanya looked quick, you know, and he was making it a good back and forth. And Dricus, you know, was down 2 rounds before he did get that win in the 4th, but it was a competitive fight, though. You know, even though Adesanya was winning, it's not like Dricus was out there, you know, drunk man style, just laying on the floor. He was drunk man style, swinging and banging. This is going in S tier because it was a pick'em, and a lot of people did think that Izzy was going to win. It was a risk, but I was confident in this one. I was very confident that DDP was going to take it. Definitely gave me a scare, but definitely one of my best bets of the year. But moving on up next to Ian Machado Garry and his win over Michael Venom Page at UFC 303, I believe, from this June. Ian Garry, I believe, this fight opened up as close to a pick'em, but as the fight was getting closer, Garry opened up more and more as a favorite, and I think closed as a minus 160, someone around that area. So I'm going to put this one in the A tier. I thought this was a good pick. I thought that this was a good bet as well. So Ian Garry, going into the fight, I thought he was going to win. I think, like I said with Patty, I think, ironic, these two are just fucking next to each other on the screen right now. I feel like it's one of those things where people, when you don't like the guy or you think they have a cringy personality, which guaranteed arguments that both these guys do. Great, I get it. But when you have these guys and you just kind of get distracted from who they are as the fighter and what's going to go on in the cage, it can kind of fuck things up. And I feel like a lot of people thought that Michael Venom Page was going to win this fight. Now, don't get me wrong, MVP is such an elite striker, and he definitely was going to present a lot of problems for Ian Garry, and I don't think anybody really expected, well, not anybody really expected, but I don't think most people were expecting Ian Garry to put the fight into the clinch and try and get it to the ground as much as he was. MVP did turn Ian Garry into a wrestler, and hey, we just saw him against Shavkat, though, ever improving defensive grappling. It's even almost had Shavkat out via sub. So the difference between the Shavkat performance though and this is that Ian got a lot of disrespect going into this fight and even after he won, which I get it because I think that some people thought that MVP won and there was an argument there. I personally think you could have the fight as a draw, but at the end of the day, I thought this was a good pick. I thought that Ian Garry was going to go in there and piece him up for 3 rounds. I know MVP is super talented on the feet, and overall, you know, he does have solid takedown defense as well. He's super fucking fast, and he's dangerous for a lot of guys. You know, he can crack, but at the end of the day, Ian Garry was 15-0, undefeated, I believe, 14-0, whatever the fuck, and it's the same thing with Patty. If someone's going to beat these guys with all this plot armor on it, the company's a bit behind them, I just think if someone's going to beat these guys with all the plot armor, it's going to be somebody who's top 5, elite level, or very dangerous, or a guy who's going to be around that elite level for the next few years. Those are the guys that are going to beat the Patty Pimbletts or the Ian Garrys, okay? Because those guys, I hate to fucking tell y'all, they're going to get past a lot of guys in the rankings, and it's just going to keep surprising everybody every fucking time, and yada, yada, yada. But so I just knew that MVP wasn't going to be the one to put a 1 in Ian Garry's record. You know what I mean? I thought it was going to be someone more of the elite caliber. Not that MVP isn't, blah, 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 whatever the fuck, but it is what it is. So moving on up next to Max Holloway and his performance at UFC 300. I put money on Holloway in this one. I was confident for this pick, and I'm putting this in the S tier, obviously. Of course, amongst the MMA community, for most of the build-up to the fight, everybody thought that Gaethje was going to go in there and absolutely just fucking school Holloway. There were, of course, a few people that, you know, kind of were like, I don't think so. And as the fight came closer and closer, the odds became closer as well. Holloway was, of course, still the underdog the whole time, but the odds definitely got closer. And I'm putting this in the S tier, man, because I didn't think that Holloway was going to knock him out, but I thought that he was going to go in there and school Gaethje for a majority of the fight on the feet, you know? It's not like Gaethje was going to shoot a fucking takedown, and at the end of the day, Holloway has good takedown defense anyway, so it is what it fucking is. We all knew, and it was for the BMF title, UFC 300, featured fight, I believe, so, like, we all knew this was going to be a back-and-forth absolute war on the feet, okay? When you're playing that kind of game, okay, Gaethje, super hard-hitting power and an amazing striker, can absolutely unleash fury and hell on guys, but Holloway has one of the best fucking chins in the UFC, right up there with John Jones, Cheeto Vera, and all that. I put him above Cheeto, Jesus Christ, but Holloway's one of the best chins in the UFC. And when he had time to bulk up, like this fight got announced 3 or 4 months before UFC 300. Like this was like January this fight got announced. So Holloway had proper time to bulk up and prepare for Justin Gaethje. You know, this wasn't like the Dustin Poirier move. Like this was a proper move to lightweight, especially at this point in his career for Max Holloway. So his chin was going to get even better, and on top of that, his power was going to get better, but it's not like I thought he was going to knock Gaethje out. But at the end of the day, the only way I could see Gaethje beating Max Holloway in that fight, going into it, was via knockout, and I knew for a fact that Gaethje wasn't going to knock out Holloway because his chin was too good. Holloway's too quick. He was going to avoid the big shots, and he's so good on the feet that he was going to be able to overwhelm him with the volume, and that's exactly what happened. So I'm proud of the pick. I'm sad I didn't have a YouTube channel at the time because I would have been extra fucking proud. But I was super happy when this one hit, obviously, because again, so many people were picking Justin Gaethje. But I just knew, man, that Holloway was going to be able to stand in front of him and not stray away. And that's what happened. So 50-45 and 49-46 or whatever the fuck, and then knocked him out in the last second. Amazing underdog pick. For anybody that had Holloway winning via knockout, I can't imagine the profit. That must have been fucking massive. I'm happy for you. But so moving on up next, putting this one in the S tier. I don't know if I said that already, but moving on up next to Jiri Prochazka. This is his loss to Alex Pereira at UFC 303. He was a plus 120, so a very slight underdog. You know what? Say what you will about the odds makers, whatever the fuck, but they put a lot of respect on Jiri, and I feel like as they should, because both of the times he fought Pereira, the betting odds were very, very close, and even the rematch, like this fight I'm talking about right now, a lot of respect was put on Prochazka, and I think very deserved. Now, why? I'm going to put this in the C tier, okay? And why did I go with Jiri? I thought that Jiri was a good underdog, you know? I liked his performance at UFC 300, you know? I thought it was going to kind of be something similar, where he'd be able to take Pereira's big shots and then come back in kind of the later rounds, and I thought he performed decent in the first fight against Pereira, and I thought the stoppage in that one was early, so that's the whole, like, year and a half that Prochazka was out, so that was his first fight back, so I feel like if there was ever a time for Prochazka to lose, it was going to be against Pereira the first time, because he was coming off that big layoff, but this was like an active Prochazka coming into this rematch, you know, because he had the Rakic fight, which he won and had good moments, and going into this one, here's the thing though, like both these guys stepped up on the last minute to save the pay-per-view, and I respect it, but I feel like going into it, everybody was hyping up Alex, and I'm like, dude, nobody's putting respect on Jiri, and I thought that in my head, I'm like, look, I know that Jiri took a lot of bigger shots at UFC 300. These guys are both coming out at the same time. Same turnaround, UFC 300 to UFC 303. So the difference is Prochazka took a shit ton of damage and Pereira didn't take any at all, you know? Prochazka had a 2-round war. Lots of strikes were thrown. Lots of strikes were taken. And Pereira had his easiest title defense and took Hill out genuinely half a round. I thought Prochazka was going to look better in the rematch, learn more, but at the end of the day, I should have kept into consideration that his chin was going to be a lot more damaged going into this fight. It was going to be a lot more compromised, and obviously you can't go against Pereira, who, by the way, I said fucking Prochazka, I liked him as an underdog because he does well there. Pereira was 7-0, undefeated as a favorite. Now 8-0, probably even, I think, Khalil, so maybe 9-0. So this is going in C. I get where I was coming from. I had a lot of faith in Prochazka, but at the end of the day, I underestimated how great Pereira is. Like, I thought that Prochazka, like, I'm like, oh, Pereira, dude, like, everybody's overhyping him, and I do think he's a great champion, but I think that Prochazka's gonna be able to take him out of there, and that's not all what happened. Pereira is that guy right now. He's running the whole fucking UFC, and he's one of those talents like a Topuria or Makhachev, where this is kind of their era right now. So Prochazka is unfortunately just another one of the title defenses. He took a brutal loss. I'm gonna put this in the C tier because I get where I was coming from. Solid pick, and the betting odds were close. Obviously, it didn't hit. Moving on up next to Vitor Petrino. I put money on him. He was a massive favorite going into the fight against Anthony Smith at UFC 301, I believe. He was like over a minus 400. Smith fraud checked him, okay? And this is after UFC Tampa, whatever the fuck. So we just saw Dustin Jacoby knock out Petrino as well. So obviously this is AJ even worse for him. But yeah, man, Smith fraud checked him. This was supposed to be Petrino's clear entry. I mean, he's a Brazilian. It was in Brazil. He's a big, powerful guy for the division, and a lot of people were buying into the hype. Massive favorite. Anthony Smith, all Smith was supposed to be was his entry into the rankings and to get a, no name on his resume. No, Smith took him out in a fucking round via sub, and Smith loses most of his recent fights, so this was wild to see, and Petrino was a massive favorite, so he got fraud checked, and again, this is after the Dustin Jacoby fight, so, I mean, this is a shit pick, but I get why I did it. This is going to go in the D tier. I get why I did it, because he was a massive favorite, and, like, he was supposed to win the fights. At the end of the day, most people obviously were going with Petrino on this one, but let us all fucking down, man. Justin Jacoby now too, so one of the just a hard fall off for the young upcoming Vitor Petrino, bro. So this is going in the D tier, eat rocks. So fucking moving on up next to our first addition into the F tier. We have Alexander Rakic. I thought this guy was gonna beat Mokaev and Ankalaev. I put money on it. He was like a plus 300. This did not work out well for me, and this was one of those picks and one of those bets where I made the decision, right? I think I even said in my predictions video, like I would, like this is just purely one of those like underdogs. I think if there's going to be one of them that wins on the card, I think it's going to be this one. I think the Ankalaev going into it might have been a bit too focused on Pereira and a little bit too worked up over all that shit. And I was worrying that if he wasn't going to shoot a takedown or some shit against Rakic, and you know, it was just a battle on the feet, that Rakic was going to get the better of him. And not going to lie, the fight was 1-1 for most people going into that third round. And if it wasn't for Rakic's fucking coaches and the low fight IQ, I don't even want to say the low fight IQ of Rakic, because I get that a lot of it is on the coaches, like for telling him going into third that he's up 2-0 and to cruise this round. Terrible fucking corner advice. Rakic genuinely could have won the damn fight 2-1, but it is what it is. It was also in Abu Dhabi, so who the hell knows? They probably would have given it to Ankalaev anyways. But I just, like, this was one of those bets where I just saw the number on Rakic, and I thought that, like, if there was going to be an underdog to win at UFC 308, I thought it could have been him. That was not the case at all, and he got schooled 2-1. Don't get me wrong, did have a couple solid moments, but they weren't even solid moments. More so he just looked solid in the fight, but at the end of the day, Ankalaev just overwhelmed him on the feet. Didn't even need to shoot the fucking takedown anyways, but this was a bad pick. This is going in F tier. This was just one of those ones where I fucking got the hard eyes over the thought of winning of a plus 300 and a huge underdog in Rakic. Bad pick, bad bet. It is what it fucking is. Moving on up next to Alexander Volkov versus Ciryl Gane at UFC 310. I put money on Volkov. I genuinely thought Volkov was going to win the damn fight. I thought I had good reasons for it, and he did. He won the fight. And this is, you know, I'm putting this in the B tier because I didn't win this bet. This bet did lose, okay? So this is the only one, as I mentioned, like in the very beginning of the video, like that there's going to be something in the SAB tier that I didn't win the bet, but it's still going to go up there. That is this. Because Volkov, I would say 9 out of 10 MMA fans, all right, unless you're a Frenchie, you're kind of just mental. What was the girl's name? Like someone Birdie? Ala La Bird? I'm fucking that up, but unless you're one of those motherfucking people, most people thought that Alexander Volkov won the fight. I did as well. And I mean, going into the fight as well, my logic was I thought that Volkov seemed hungrier, more motivated, was more active, racking up better wins. I feel like was learning more since him and Gane fought the first time, was making better improvements. And I thought, Gane, he's out here making movies and shit. He's not worrying about like the Volkov rematch. He's just trying to find like, I think that Gane is just kind of one of those guys like, kind of enjoys being in the environment, being on top, you know, being a high-paid combat sports athlete. You know, I think he fucks with the lifestyle, but at the end of the day, I think he's going to be a lot of guys in the heavyweight division, Ciryl Gane, but I think there's going to be matchups like a Volkov or like a Pavlovich. You could even argue a Rosenstruck soon, a Jarinzo Rosenstruck. Obviously, guys like John Jones and Aspinall, but I'm naming all these guys, even a John Almeida that Ciryl Gane might not make it past, or probably won't make it past, depending on who you ask, you know what I mean? But I thought that Volkov was going to get the better of him. Most people thought that Volkov won. Gane is going to run into a lot of problems. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do with Jones and Aspinall. I don't know what you're going to do with Gane. I don't know what you're going to do with Volkov. The whole robbery thing kind of fucked everything up. I get that the company got what they wanted because Gane, you know, especially after BSC just got fucked up so bad at Paris, I feel like they want their French stock to keep rising. Like, imagine Imavov loses next in February. So, I don't know, man. It was a clear as day robbery. It is what it is. I'm putting this in B because it was a good pick and it was a good bet, and if it hit, it would have been in the S tier, but Volkov got robbed, so this is going to go in B. Moving on up next. Oh, Jesus Christ, dude. Okay, so this is a really bad pick. Stipe Miocic, man. I put money on Stipe Miocic as a plus 650. I thought that he was going to take this. I literally can't even, oh my god, dude. I'm getting secondhand fucking embarrassed from myself because I genuinely put money on Stipe, dog. Alright, it's not even the fact that the putting money on it. It's the fact that I picked Stipe to win. I made the whole predictions. This is going in the F tier. I went with Stipe Miocic to beat John Jones. I thought that he was going to take him out via like a third round knockout, something around that. I thought that Stipe was going to look better as the fight progressed. John was going to start out strong and that John was going to have a big edge in the grappling. I thought that was going to be where the fight was going to be the most dangerous for Miocic, but I thought that Miocic was going to be able to look a lot better than people thought, and he was going to be able to hold his own in the feet. I thought that the power was going to end up getting him, but no. Maybe if this fight ended up happening, you know, in 2020 or 2021, you know, even after the Ngannou knockout, like I could still see Miocic winning that one. But this one, man, what the fuck was I thinking, dog? I know what I was thinking because I thought that Jones was going to get cracked. I thought that there was going to be, my biggest thing for this fight was that there was going to be a curse, okay? Every single year, ever since COVID, I was saying there's been one or two really big upsets each year. And I know that Bilal was kind of the one this year and a few other ones, but like, it wasn't the same energy. I'm talking about like Juliana Pena beating Amanda Nunes, Leon Edwards beating Kamaru Usman, Sean Strickland beating Israel Adesanya. I thought Stipe beating John was going to be the next big upset. And I get that, like, logically, picking Stipe didn't make a lot of sense, and I was aware of that, but I just felt something in the air. I thought that it was going to be one of those random big as fuck upsets that nobody expected and that Stipe was going to crack him, and it was going to be one of those fights where the winner, even though he won, it made no sense. Like, what the fuck are we talking about? But at the end of the day, this is an F. I don't even want to waste any more breath on it. It was an awful pick, and I'm not going to be doing that again next year. Not that Stipe is going to come back, but you know what I'm saying. I'm not going to be doing that bullshit unless... No, all right, I can't. Somebody stop me, dude. Moving on up next to Muhammad Mokaev. Obviously, he's now no longer in the UFC, but the betting odds were a lot closer on this one than I remember. This fight was really close to a pick'em. Mokaev was like a very slight favorite, like a -115 against Manel Kape in July at UFC 304, and I thought that Mokaev was going to beat him. I was surprised that the odds were this close. I know that Kape is very skilled, especially on the feet, super fast, elite striker, and especially, you know, I'm talking after this Bruno Silva performance as well. He went out there and put himself on the map, so that makes the stock rise even more. But I'm just talking about Manel Kape at this time versus Muhammad Mokaev. I know that these guys had this big ass grudge match, and the beef was so insane going up to it in the build up, and ended up not delivering at all. One of the most boring fights of the year. It was tragic. Mokaev, I know they didn't release him just because he's boring. I know that a big reason was because he caused a bunch of fucking antics outside. But at the end of the day, I just thought that Mokaev was going to overwhelm him in the grappling and was just kind of going to sit on there and lay on him. And I thought that this was kind of going to be one of those fights where kind of pitter-patter on the feet. Not much was going to happen. I thought that Mokaev was just going to keep trying to get in the ground, and it was just going to be too much for him down there. I don't even want to waste my breath really with this fight or whatever the fuck, but I'm going to put this Mokaev pick in the A tier because the betting odds were really close, and a lot of people did think that Manel Kape was going to knock him out, but I just thought that Muhammad Mokaev was going to overwhelm him with the grappling and drown him. It is what it is. Shit fight, and I'm not going to waste any more time. So moving on up next to Cory. Okay, we're piling up the D tier. Let's keep it rolling. So moving on next to Cory Sandhagen. I put money on Cory Sandhagen to beat Umar Nurmagomedov at UFC Fight Night Abu Dhabi. I thought that Cory Sandhagen was genuinely going to win, you know, and I'm a big Cory Sandhagen fan. He's my favorite bantamweight, one of my favorite fighters on the roster. I love the guy's fights, whatever the fuck. Say what you want about his recent performances, you know, the one against Umar. You can say whatever you want about the Rob Fowler fight, whatever the fuck, but I think that Cory is a really skilled fighter on the feet, and he's been prepping and dialed in on Umar for over an entire year, like this specific opponent, but there were pullouts, all this bullshit, but I thought Cory was so locked in and dialed and trying to find all the fucking ways to be the one, to be the, what is it, like 80-1, not that, maybe not even that much, but like all the Nurmagomedovs are all undefeated. They got this huge undefeated record combined. I know Cory wanted to be the one to defeat him, you know, be the one on that record, and I get it. I thought with all the time spent dialed in on Umar and all the time, you know, trying to figure this guy out and, you know, developing his takedown defense, developing the offensive grappling as well. I thought that even though Umar is a very well-rounded fighter, you know, he has a good pace and pressure, he could put out guys, he has solid cardio, really crisp on the feet, man. And that's the thing that kind of separates him from Khabib. Like, Umar, I feel like more so is a striker, which is kind of crazy, but, you know, Umar's good on the feet, and also, obviously, good grappling, very good grappling as well, so I know that Umar's good and well-rounded, but I thought that Cory was going to have a gap in the striking, and I thought, since there was going to be that gap on the feet, it all comes down to the fight is the grappling. So, well, obviously not all it comes down to, but for this fight, this matchup, I thought that was going to be the biggest factor besides the stand-up skills, and I thought that Cory, you know, it sucks, and it's weird to even talk about, because Cory did do well. He got 49-46, okay, and that is unfortunate, but he did do solid. You know, obviously as the fight progressed, Umar looked better and Cory kind of looked worse, and you could tell that he was kind of visibly, I feel like, frustrated in there. But at the end of the day, man, this was a D-tier pick. I get why I did it. I understand. But in retrospect, too, I mean, Cory was a massive underdog going into it, and I just feel like I was buying on the Cory hype train. I thought Cory was going to be the one to end it. I thought he had all the skills necessary to do it, but that simply was not true. I was underestimating how good these fucking Nurmagomedovs are, and I feel like that was kind of also a big problem going into this. So I underestimated Umar, man. He really went out there, and it's not like I thought that Umar was bad before, but I just feel like I was one of those guys too, kind of like a lot of people, where I was like, we just haven't seen a lot of this guy against elite competition. Cory is that elite competition. He's no fucking joke. And he's on a win streak right now, dialed in for this specific guy, developing his skills. But Cory spent way too much time developing the wrestling where he just forgot how to strike. If Cory had that nice balance in the fight where he was looking as good on the ground as he was, but then he was also able to outland Umar, land, all the crazy flying knees that we love from Cory Sandhagen, wild shots, being able to put on the pace and pressure on Umar, clean, precise shots. I thought that Cory was going to piece him up, but that's just not what happened. So enough about this. It already hurts too much, so we're just going to put this in D tier. It was a poor pick, and in retrospect, probably just should have fucking went with Umar, but no regrets. Cory, I got you, man. So moving on up next to Deiveson Figueiredo. Obviously fought a couple times this year, but I'm specifically talking about his performance against Chito Vera. Obviously won that fight. He was kind of I don't even want to say a big favorite. He was the favorite in this fight. Slight favorite, but I know a lot of people were going with Chito Vera in this one. But I thought that Figgy was going to take it. I'm going to put this one in the A tier, considering that Figgy wasn't that big of a favorite, especially for most of the build-up to the fight. I know the week of, it kind of changed and became slightly a bigger favorite than he was, but this fight was a big back and forth, especially amongst the community. I know a lot of people were going with Chito in this one, but I just thought that Figgy's on a fucking tear right now, and he's looking great at bantamweight. I thought that if he was going to lose, it was going to be to a Sean O'Malley, a Cory Sandhagen, a Piotr Jan, somebody that. Chito Vera, in my opinion, is one of the most overrated fighters of all time. I've talked about it before on the channel, and it's all due respect if you're a Chito fan. I think personality-wise, seems like a cool dude, but very frustrating fighter, man. I'm not going to lie. I do think his skill set is very overrated. I know that he has a really good chin, okay? But if half the talking point, when people are talking about your skill set as a fighter, when half the fucking talking point is your chin alone, right? At least with guys like Holloway, Jones, other guys with good chins, there's more to them, I feel like, and talking points to their arsenal and their skill sets. But Chito, man, I knew that Figgy can crack. I didn't think he was going to drop him like he did, so all due respect, But I just thought that Figgy was going to be able to get Chito to the ground. I know Chito does have solid takedown defense, but I thought that Figgy was going to be able to take him down a lot easier than what ended up happening, because Chito stuffed a lot of the takedowns, especially in that second or third round. I forgot which one, but I was wrong there. But at the end of the day, Figgy did end up piecing him up on the feet, which I did believe. And I also knew the fight was 3 rounds. If it was 5, maybe I would have leaned towards Chito a little bit, but when it's 3 rounds and the entire first round, Chito isn't going to win because that's his warm-up round, because builds into it, slow starter, he's not going to do shit that first. So I already knew after the first round that Figgy was going to be up 1. So what about those next 2 rounds? I just saw Figgy piecing him up and outlanded him, outstriking him, and like I mentioned earlier, I thought he was going to be able to take him to the ground at will. That ended up to not at will, but you know what I'm fucking saying. Yeah, got the pick right. Don't get me wrong, Chito did have a couple moments and did make it competitive, but this was a good pick. I was confident in it, and I'm going to be going with A on this one. And a lot of people were going with Chito, so it is what it is. So moving on up next to Robert Whittaker and his win over Ikram Aliskerov at UFC Saudi Arabia in June, I believe. So obviously, original opponent was supposed to be Khamzat Chimaev, the first time, but ended up pulling out, and then Aliskerov stepped in, 7 or 10 days notice, something like that. Whittaker, the fact that he was only a -150 favorite, and it didn't even start that way. It started, he was an even smaller favorite. The level of disrespect, dog, because I get that Aliskerov is dangerous. I think he's going to go beat Andre Muniz whenever they fight, I believe, February. I think he's going to beat a lot of guys. He's a great prospect on the rise, entertaining. I get it. But Robert Whittaker, who was dialed in and prepped and he has so much experience. Whittaker's such a well-rounded fighter. He's ranked top 3 in the world, one of the best middleweights of all time. I did not think that Ikram Aliskerov, Chimaev maybe, okay, but Ikram Aliskerov, on short notice, I don't give a fuck if it's in Abu Dhabi or whatever the hell, and Khabib's you must do this, brother. You do have to take and seize opportunity. I don't give a fuck. Robert Whittaker, man, is so skilled, and there's levels to this, and there's depth. Now, granted, if this was a full camp, maybe even after Robert Whittaker just lost at Chimaev and Aliskerov now, who knows what would happen if these guys fought now, and especially if Aliskerov had a full camp. But that's not how it worked. I thought that everyone was fucking disrespecting Rob, man. Now, did I think that Whittaker was going to go out there and knock him out? No. But at the end of the day, I thought it seemed like a clear win for Whittaker. I thought he was just going to piece him up for 5 rounds. So I'm going to put this in the B tier. This wasn't the craziest pick in the world. I feel like more people probably should have saw it coming. The knockout is kind of what got us. And a great highlight to add to Whittaker's reel. He hasn't gotten a finish in fucking years. So that was great to see. It was a very feel-good moment, So happy as hell for Whittaker, and I'm glad that one hit. But yeah, I'm just going to put him in B because it's not like it was the craziest bet in the world. I get that he wasn't a super big favorite. But at the end of the day, it just seemed like this, like the right winner won in my opinion. Okay, especially Aliskerov if it was short notice. Moving on up next to Charles Oliveira, and this is his performance against Arman Tsarukyan at UFC 300. I did go with Charles this time. Okay, I know I didn't put money on him in the Chandler fight, but I thought that Charles was gonna go out there. I thought he was gonna beat Tsarukyan 2-1. I thought he was gonna have a lot of good moments on the feet, put a lot of aggressiveness forward, and that was the thing that I feel like held Oliveira back in this fight, and why he lost is because yeah, he did have good moments, especially on the ground in that third round, but on the feet, I feel like we didn't see the in-your-face relentlessness that we've been seeing from Oliveira in his past few fights. You know, against Beneil Dariush, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, and more. Like, Oliveira is one of the most aggressive in-your-face fighters, pound for pound, in the entire roster. You know, and one of the most entertaining as well. And don't get me wrong, it was a really fun fight, but I didn't expect Oliveira to be as timid as he was. And I'm not saying that it was a really bad performance from him, but I'm gonna put this in the D tier. I did have kind of this like hunch feeling. Something doesn't seem right. I feel like everyone's going with Oliveira here. He's a big fan favorite. I feel like we all just want to see him win. He already had the win against Dariush that he kind of overcame. I just didn't think we were going to get two of those moments where Oliveira, you know, loses title shot, pulls out whatever the fuck, comes back, beats contender, has to go back, whatever the fuck. Got it done with Beneil once. Fair play. Even someone who had money on Charles, dog. Some people make an argument that Oliveira won 2-1. I'm a big Oliveira fan, and again, I had money on him, but Tsarukyan won the fight, dog. I wouldn't really call it a robbery. Like, close fight for sure, and it was a good back and forth, but maybe I could even be nice to put in C, but I don't know. I feel like I should have just kind of known a bit better. Kind of was underestimating Tsarukyan a lot and kind of overhyping Charles in the head, and maybe it was just because, you know, I believe in the motherfucker's hype, or maybe it's just because I like the guy a lot as a fighter. I don't know, but would have really loved to see him get the win. It is what it is. Arman's out here punch fans. Now he's going to be the next one to punch Makhachev. It is what the fuck it is. I'm going to put this in the D tier. It just wasn't a great bet, not a bad one, because I understand where me and a lot of other people are coming from who put money or just pick Charles. I don't know, not my best judgment. So moving on up next to Johnny Walker. Now, this was a pretty close fight in the betting odds, okay? This was against Volkan Ozdemir. Ended up getting knocked the fuck out at UFC Saudi Arabia. They opened up the main card, and Volkan knocked him out in one round. Now, the betting odds were very, very close. Johnny Walker was a very slight favorite, minus 120. I'm going to put this in the F tier, okay? I don't give a shit how close the betting odds are or whatever. I totally thought that Walker's chin was going to be able to hang, and I underestimated the power of Ozdemir, even though Ozdemir does not really get finished, and he still does have power behind those hands. And when you're putting him against Walker, who's very, very chinny and has not been winning lately, this is going in F because, man, I should have fucking expected it. I don't know why I picked Johnny Walker over Volkan Ozdemir. Like, I feel like I was just like, Johnny Walker, yeah, I'll put money on that. Those are close odds. Like, I could see him going out there and getting the knockout. Did I not think for more than a second? You know what I mean? This is going in F. I mean, one of the chinniest fighters in the UFC. It was a bad pick. I totally underestimated Volkan Ozdemir. Great win for him. Gonna put this in the F tier. Moving on up next, I had Deiveson Figueiredo as a plus 225 big underdog against Petr Yan at UFC Macau in November. I thought that Figueiredo was going to win. I thought he was going to take like a 48-47 decision. Thought he was going to go out there. I thought this was going to be a great, fun fight, back and forth on the feet. Both guys were going to have moments, which that part ended up being very true. But at the end of the day, it was Yan who was getting a lot of the bigger moments and ultimately won the fight and won most of the rounds. And it was a fantastic performance from Yan, and I understand that he was a big favorite going into it, and a lot of people were going with Yan, but I just thought that Figgy, I thought a lot of people were sleeping on Figgy. I probably should have looked at those betting odds a little bit more and be like, oh, okay, maybe I should kind of raise my eyebrow a bit and kind of understand why a lot of people were going Yan. And I did understand why a lot of people were going Yan. You know, Yan is one of the best strikers in the UFC, also can definitely hold his own in the grappling, and he's very worthy of being in that top 5 for bantamweight. You know, one of the best bantamweights of all time. Yan is a very, very skilled fighter. He can put on the pace and pressure on guys. He can go all 5 rounds, and he schooled Figgy. You know, Figgy did get the knockdown at one point, and he did have good moments, but Figgy got shut down, and very happy for Yan, though. It was amazing seeing him go 2-0 this year. But I'm going to put the Figgy over Yan bet in the D tier. I feel like I should have been more aware of how possible it was for Yan to go out there and absolutely just fucking school Figgy. I thought this fight was going to be a lot closer than it was. Now, don't get me wrong, was very competitive, but you know what I'm saying, 48-47. So I got where I was coming from. I understand the thought process going into it because Figgy is a very talented fighter, and he won me money earlier this year against Cheeto, so it is what it is. So moving on up next to Chase Hooper. This was against Borshev at UFC St. Louis, where he went out there and absolutely, didn't he set a significant strike record for the ground and pound, whatever the hell? It was something crazy, but Chase Hooper went out there and he was the underdog against Borshev going into that fight, which baffled me. I understand that, you know, Chase Hooper, it's easy to say this now because we're at the end of 24 and he had a great year and now he's really building up the win streak, you know, and kind of people are turning now, man. People forget, man. I just don't, even at the time, before now, he's getting the ball rolling, before this win against Borshev, before the win against Quita in the first round. Like, I get why people would think Hooper's kind of, you know, win one, lose one, you know. He was winning one, he was losing one, he was young and kind of like learning, and while he was good on the ground, his striking was to improve, but he went out there and shut people up. Again, this is going in the A tier. Okay, this is a great bet on my part because, like, the fact that he was an underdog, I hopped on that shit, dude. I saw it. Like, I didn't think Hooper was going to go out there and did what he did as dominantly as he did and just showed absolute levels. But I did think it seemed like a pretty clear win for him, and I just didn't understand that he was the underdog. I mean, I don't know. I get why people were going with Borshev. I get it. But Hooper went out there and absolutely put on a clinic, absolutely fucking dominated him. Insane ground and pound. I mean, Hooper has showed this year that his striking has been evolving and that overall as a fighter, he's becoming more and more well-rounded. Lightweight is a better fit for him. He's becoming more experienced, man. His grappling is a really solid foundation for him. So I think he's going to go far. I'm not saying top 5 or any shit, but this is a good win. And this bet, I just don't understand why people weren't hopping on it. Going to put it in the A tier. Moving on up next to Joaquin Buckley. He was a minus 130 at the same card. UFC St. Louis. He was fighting Zoltan Ruzaboyev. Very small favorite. It's crazy to think that Buckley in May was a minus 130 against Ruzaboyev, but now in December, here he is later, and he was a minus 300 something against Colby Covington, you know? Here's the thing. I'm going to put this in the B tier because although I did think it was a good pick for sure, and Buckley did go out there and he ended up schooling Ruzaboyev, he 30-27'd him, I just couldn't believe that Buckley was such a small favorite, you know? It just seemed like Buckley was super hungry for this fight. He already was making improvements, and again, this was his second win of the year, I believe, out of the 4 he ended up getting. Buckley proved this year just absolute huge improvements that he's made in his game, and he's becoming, you know, just so much more well-rounded than when he was. Everyone was talking about this guy like he was a journeyman before the journey, and now he's going out there and he's ranked number 6 in the world at welterweight, and he's really putting himself on the map. Who knows what's going to happen next year, but I get why the betting odds, I guess, were so close because this was before the whole win streak and he really cemented himself. This was pre-Conor McGregor call-out. This was that night. I don't know. I'm going to put it in B. It was a solid pick, but I didn't think it was like the craziest bet in the world or anything like that. So moving on up next to Michael Chiesa at UFC 310 versus Max Griffin. I put money on him. He was a slight underdog. He was like a plus 140. I know that the odds were kind of fluctuating. 1 minute he was a big underdog. Now it's a pick'em fight. But I'm going to put Michael Chiesa, I'm going to put in the B tier, okay? Because I get he was an underdog. And obviously I love when the underdogs actually end up hitting. I'm not really great at picking them, but I'm putting it in B and not anything higher because it's like I wasn't the most confident in this one. Like I wasn't super invested in this either. Like I didn't have a lot in my mind. I just thought that there was levels on the ground. I thought that Chiesa, if it was going to go down there, was clearly going to be his fight. And of course he was going to try and get the fight down there. That's why I thought that Chiesa was going to win. It seemed like Griffin, I get both of these guys, you know, they're getting fucking old, man. Okay. And they're not the most active fighters in the world. And this obviously, I feel like, not obviously, but I feel like it was the weakest fight of just the card in general, UFC 310 and the build-up. Like, no one was really talking about this one. So, like, that's why I'm just putting it in B. It wasn't, like, the craziest pick in the world or anything super wild. It wasn't any Mystic Max shit. I just thought Chiesa was going to win. I thought he was going to take him out via sub on the ground. That ended up coming in fruition, so that's good. But, yeah, nothing crazy. I'm just going to put it in B. So, moving on up next to Sergei Pavlovich. He was a massive favorite against Alexander Volkov from this past June, and Volkov went out there and he absolutely pieced him up and frustrated the hell out of Pavlovich in there for 3 rounds, and he schooled him, and this is going in the F tier, okay? Pavlovich, I thought that Pavlovich was going to go out there, thought he was going to get the round 1 knockout, whatever the fuck. What sucks, though, is that I did have this feeling, okay? I know other people were saying this, too. There was this hunch, like, it seems like Volkov can get the upset, man. You know, who knows how Pavlovich is going to do, you know, when you're riding on these super high highs of all these knockouts, and then all of a sudden, you get knocked out. How are you going to recover? How's your confidence? Are you going to be able to go put on the aggression like you were before? And when he was put against Volkov, someone who's so, you know, he's well-rounded for a heavyweight, man, and he's very experienced, and Volkov is top 5 worthy. I should have put more respect on Volkov, because some of us had this fucking hunch, man. I'm sure some of you watching did as well. Like, I think Volkov can get this one done, man. On paper, it makes sense for him to go out there and get it because Volkov's hard to finish. So if Pavlovich can't finish him, Volkov can kind of just piece him up on the fucking feet the whole time. And Volkov is one of the more technical heavyweights. So, yeah, man, this is going in the F tier. This was just a bad. I just, like, I don't know. I should have trusted my gut. Volkov went out there and he absolutely schooled him, and I should have doubted more Pavlovich's mindset going into the fight. So, I don't know. So, at the end of the day, that's going in the F tier. And basically, this is going to be it for all of my bets from 2020. Not all of my bets, Jesus Christ. But yeah, basically, that's going to be it. These are pretty much my best and worst bets of 24 for the UFC. It's not like I'm betting on other shit anyways, but it is what it is. But yeah, some of these very proud of. You know, some of these very disappointed. I'm looking at you, Stipe and Rakic, dude. God damn. But yeah, it's going to be interesting now going into next year because I have this channel now, of course, I started this summer. So now I'm kind of going to have like There's gonna be the video evidence of like me stating the full picks all the time and shit. I know I only did in the second half of the year because I just started the channel or whatever, but hey man. I'm also gonna be doing, guys, my best and worst picks of the year video, probably coming sometime in the next week or two. Some of these fighters are gonna be on there as well. Maybe like a Pimblett or a DDP or some shit like that, but for the most part, it's gonna be different things. These were fighters that I actually, like, I took the bets on, but the picks video is just gonna be, picks. Why do I have to explain that? I don't know what I'm fucking doing, dude. But yeah, thank you guys so very much for making it this far into the video. Let me know what you thought below. Where did I flop? Where did it make sense? I have no idea. And again, thank you guys so very much for making this far in the video, taking the time out of your day to watch. We just hit 600 subs. Appreciate y'all a lot for that. Thank you so very much. And yeah, all the smoke MMA. Have a good one, guys. Have a happy fucking holiday, and I will see you guys next time.